It's 9:02. I'd like to call the special meeting of the Newark Board of Education for January the 30th to order. Roll call. Superintendent, can you help us?
President Rodriguez,
Present.
Vice President Thomas,
Here.
Member John,
Here.
Member Martinez, Member Gutierrez,
Here.
Member Martinez is on the phone from Yuma, Arizona. So we have all 5 board members here. As stated before, you do know, as long as we have a quorum, any board member that calls in can vote. So we need the approval of the agenda. I need a motion and a second, please.
I move that we approve the agenda.
I second.
Member Gutierrez moves, Member John seconds. Please vote by saying yes.
Yes.
Yes. All 4 here say yes. Member Martinez?
Yes.
Thank you. As promised, we're going to have public comment on non-agenda items. Is there anyone from the community that wants to approach the board on anything not on the agenda? Seeing none, we move to old business. I'll start it off. At the last board meeting in June, well actually it's still June, at our last board meeting there was a motion by Member Martinez, I think, and I seconded it to do a hard cap of 26 on class size. The motion was defeated. We have to vote on this prior to the end of the fiscal year, which is June 30th, and that's why we're here. Superintendent?
Thank you, President Rodriguez. I think part of the confusion around this has been this conversation about hard cap versus averages. For the last decade, we've negotiated with NTA through the lens of averaging and how we staff buildings. The conversation about a hard cap is relevantly new, and I think there's other consequences that are involved in that. And my recommendation is if that's something the board wants to explore, that's an appropriate conversation for Tuesday night, which is our largely going to be negotiations. But a small portion of that will be training, but most of it will be negotiations for the next contract. In our current language, in the contract of what we're voting on tonight is specific to Article 8.2, which still allows flexibility to go as high as 28. However, we do know that the board was interested in paying overages as we start approaching that, and we do know that there's a small number of classrooms relatively district-wide that have hit that number. However, to read from legal counsel, the 2-2 non-action vote at the last meeting means status quo remains in effect. Under the CBA, this means that CSL, CSM of 24 to 28 will automatically be in effect for 2019-2020, unless the board takes formal action to raise it. Whatever action the board may have taken for 2018-19 will not carry over to the 19-20 because the CBA language states the board may, on an annual basis, elect to increase CSL, CSM to 29 to 31. So what we're doing again is bringing forward this flexibility, which largely is part of negotiations, and the staff's very clear that the board wants to try to maintain lower class sizes and keep the high class size to a minimum. And I think the other thing that I would say about hard cap is there's unintended consequences with hard cap, specifically increase of combo classes and potential increase of overflowing of students. So that's kind of the bigger concern. But I want to just be clear with the board that the conversation around hard cap, we're willing to have that. I think that, but I did provide in a recent email the financial impact. If the board doesn't take action today, we would have to increase staffing of about 5. And if it was even lowered further, currently we stand around, I believe it's 26 to 1, 24 to 1.
On the average.
On the average.
Mm-hmm.
which would be a cost of almost $1 million to the district. If that was hard capped to 26 to 1, it would be almost $500,000, a little more than $500,000, which is about 5 teachers. That's why we're asking for flexibility to to do this. And the reason we're here today is we have to act on it before July 1. So I hope I've answered and tried to set the stage for where some of the confusion may be.
So in summary, allowing the flexibility to 29 and paying overages probably will cost roughly 10,000 to 20,000.
If we exercise flexibility, we will do everything to try to keep overages to the minimum. I don't believe that the amount we would pay in overages would exceed, I would say 30,000 to be safe.
Okay. And the consequence for hard cap at 26 is at least $500,000.
Yes.
Okay.
I have a question regarding our current status quo. So you said our prior, I believe there were 2 discussions about this matter, did not go through. So currently we're at whatever we stood for 2018-19?
Currently, there was 2 votes on this by the board.
Correct.
One was in May and one was recently in June. The June vote was null and void because there was no action because it was 2-2. The prior vote was action, and per legal counsel, the board can only change an action with an action. So
Can you just refresh my memory and then what's our status with May?
the status currently is 24 to 28.
Which is what we have.
That's currently what it stands at now,
Uh-huh.
unless the board takes action.
Which means we'll try to have a limit of, just to see if I'm understanding this correctly, we'll have a class size limit of 24, but we could go up to 28.
In some cases, yes, but this current structure would have a financial impact as I described.
Could I ask,
This one?
The 24/28
Correct?
would remain in effect for 1920 unless we take action.
Okay.
And I know Member Martinez is waiting.
Sorry, I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
So, coming back to the estimate for the cost or the potential increase in cost if we were to hard cap at 26, in that model, did you guys assume increase in combo classes?
Yes.
Or was it just a mathematical, like, how could, because I don't think we saw that, right? What was in the assumptions for that?
Let me pull that up. I have that here.
While we're waiting, I wanted to share my conversation with the business office and in combination with HR. The 26 to 1 hard cap, and we get lost in the numbers sometimes, would be about 5, 6 extra FTE, and it would cost some combo classes. And the effect on the budget would be between $400,000 to $500,000. If we don't vote at all and we can't come to an agreement, then it would go back to 24 to 1, which means financial impact would be about $1 million. So that's why we're here to vote on a motion and a second, and then we can move on. Okay.
So if I may clarify Ms. Martinez's question. Yes, that was factored in, the kind of the typical proportionality of combo classes we would have, as well as, if we couldn't make the classes at one site, we would have to overflow to another site or move a teacher to another site if there was more interest in a grade level. So yes, we did look at those 2 factors.
Member Thomas is next. Member Martinez, did you still have an additional question? And then I'll turn it over to Member Thomas.
Just a follow-up, it just, because mathematically, it just doesn't make sense given the enrollment and given where other schools, are running at a lower than the 26 ratio.
Right.
And yes, I hear you that there would have to be overflow, and I have heard you from staff, I guess from the team, say, hey, we don't want to do that. And I understand that that's not preferable, but that's why I think that the 500,000, that's another 5 teachers or so, right?
Right.
It just seems It seems high to me, frankly. I mean, if we didn't assume, that we did a full assumption.
If
I suppose.
If I may add another way to look at it, in this year that has already closed, we staffed buildings at a ratio of 26-1, which means we take the number of students that we have based on projections that are attending that school, we divide it by that ratio, we allocate teachers divided by that number. The 24-1 would raise the ratio of teachers and staffing, and that's where we're calculating a large portion of that difference of 5 FTE. Just by changing the ratio, it means you need more teachers. That's the mathematical formula. That's
Right.
probably
But
more
that's
more
20
appropriate.
I'm sorry, Pat.
Go ahead.
But that's 24, not 26-1, which
Correct.
is, I think, what Ray and I were talking about. I think when we had made the motion, it was to hard cap at 26, not at 24.
Right.
If I remember correctly.
Right, and that's why the legal counsel shared with us that current status this year, going forward in the next year, because of the one vote that the board did do, and him reviewing both videos, he says that if we don't take action, we will be staffing at 24-1, not 26-1, which is causing the torque on the budget.
So what is the status? So in 2018, 2019, we're at the max at 26, but allow flexibility.
We staffed at 26-1,
But we allow the flexibility to 29, right?
Correct.
That's what's happening. So
correct. Member Thomas has been waiting.
Yeah.
My recollection from the vote we took, and apparently the attorney doesn't see it that way, was that your motion.
yeah, I
I
said
was-
hard cap and then also said paying overages, so it's
Yeah, hard
conflicting.
cap and overages, which to me means that we would have a hard cap of 26, not a hard cap of 24, so I'm confused about that. But given that we're here and we're going to be doing it kind of from scratch anyway, I think that's kind of not an issue, it's kind of a moot point. But I think we need to be clear in the way we do our motions and understand them so that this doesn't happen, in the future.
Agreed.
Great.
Okay, since we've had the conversation, if there's no other,
I'm still a little confused on exactly what we're voting on, so Cory, President, if you, before you just say, pass this motion, can you, just for clarification purposes, let me know what is the status that we will be voting on currently?
I can read that. The purpose is to allow flexibility in class size for grades transitional kindergarten 2-3, as well as to provide district flexibility in order to minimize overflow of students at other sites. So the background on this is, so the recommended action is the negotiations team and staff recommend the board approve this agenda item, which will give the district flexibility to increase CSL CSM to 29 to 31.
And are we paying overages?
If we
No.
go over 29. So if that's,
No, over 26.
no.
no.
Oh,
Again,
I mean-
I think that's what, I'm sorry, but I think that's where a lot of the confusion comes. We really need to pay attention. That's why I asked, what are we voting on? So we can be sure, and we really need to pay attention because all these numbers is just creating confusion. If you don't mind, Superintendent, can you repeat again what is it that we're gonna be voting on?
Giving the district flexibility to increase the CSL CSM to 29/31.
And
No overages.
going back, that's what the staff is recommending, no overages.
yeah.
I'd like to have a discussion about the benefit of overages in terms of a little bit more equity, because we have such small school sizes. In some cases, last year we had 20 students in a K3, TK3 class, and in others we had 28 or 29. And to me, anything over 26, to give at least an overage to the teacher would be a little more equitable and acknowledging of the increased burden on them, as opposed to those that have under 26.
Okay.
So Superintendent, for TK3, I think last time, one of the ideas that we floated around my chart was TK3, we allow the flexibility to go to 29, but anything above 26, we pay overages
Yeah.
to teachers. And in this scenario, if for grade 4 to 6, if we allow the flexibility to go to 31, what will be the threshold for paying overages?
Well, I think currently the recommendation is silent on overages. However, I would recommend an amendment as follows: that the board approve the agenda item, which will give the district flexibility to increase CSM 29 to 31, with the understanding that any classes that are staff or that have more than 26 students would be paid an overage per student
Okay.
per the agreement.
Okay, well then,
Only at TK3 though.
Only TK3.
Only TK, okay.
Yes.
And,
so,
and,
so,
and
sorry, only TK3, if they are staffed over 26, will get overages.
That's my recommendation. Trying to understand what the spirit of the board was after. I can restate it if you like.
And last night, I remember the CBO stated the entire our district, TK3, there are only single digital classes that's really over 26. Like that's what, I remember that's what.
Yes. About three,
I don't
four
recall. I
Yeah,
have
three
to
or,
check.
yeah, 3 or 4.
It was a low number. I do
classes
remember that.
Across the entire district, 3 or 4 classes over 26. That's why it's safe to say that 30,000 might be the max we're paying the overages.
Yes.
Just like if we don't take any action today, we went back to default 24 hard cap, that is 1 million plus
Right.
cost.
Right.
And if we hard cap at 26, which was the motion that a week ago we raised, that will be
Right.
half a million to
Right.
half a million.
That's correct.
Right, because we need to bring back the 5 FTE we cut from our earlier budget reduction resolution, right?
Right.
Okay.
So my understanding, could you read the recommendation again?
Let me try a stab at a clean recommendation. The district negotiation team and staff recommend the board approve this agenda item, which will give the district flexibility on TK through 3 class size to increase. Let me try it again. Relative to TK through 3 class size, the district negotiations team and staff recommend the board approve this agenda item, which will give the district flexibility to increase the CSM to 29 to 31, with the understanding that classrooms that are over 26 will be paid an overage for TK3 only.
Right, okay. So we need a motion if somebody wants to make it on that, and any further discussion?
I'm ready to make a motion.
Okay.
I do have a comment.
Okay,
Okay.
go ahead.
Um,
And
I just want to say that I understand that if we're going to be moving forward with this, but I think one of the important factors that I think we need to consider is, as I join this board, I hear a lot of, let's be financially conservative, let's not spend where we don't need to, or we don't have the money, so let's not spend. So I think it's important that as a board, we kind of take responsibility for the things that we're voting on, because in this case, it will require some overages. I do understand that we need to balance where, or set some kind of priorities where we're willing to spend, but I think it's important that overall we consider what are our priorities, and if one of our priorities is to get financial solvency, we do really need to take into consideration where we're spending our money.
Okay, thank you. Member Martinez, did you have something?
I'm sorry, I wanted to make a comment, and I think that we heard, the first vote was about overages and compensating the teachers, and I think over the last couple of meetings, and just in the context of negotiations, the teachers, they've been very clear that, of course, they're not going to turn away some additional compensation, but it really is the teaching environment that we're really putting at risk, right? Hence the discussion around 26 hard capping. I understand the motion. I just wanted to remind ourselves that is what our teachers are saying, right? It's not so much that I want you to pay me additional money. It's that, really please consider the environment we're putting these little kids in. They're pretty small. They're running around. There's 29 of them. So anyway, just something to think about.
Agreed. At the last meeting, when you made the motion and I seconded it, it was very clear that the teachers, that it's not the money, it's keeping the class size at a minimum. And our average over the district is 24 to 1. We just happen to have a few classes that are going to be over. And so I need a motion and a second.
You had a motion.
Member
Okay.
Tom, do you have a comment?
Oh, my only comment was to agree with Member Martinez. Mike,
Mike, is it yours?
Yeah, Martinez, that it isn't about the money so much as about the classroom situation and children being in a good position to learn. I also think, you know, when you look at 30,000 max, hopefully that'll be less than that. And there's so many other things in the budget that are over 30,000 that we should look at potentially cutting to compensate for that 30,000. I think there are places we can look.
Thank you.
I just want to make one
Motion
more
in a second.
before I make the motion. So I think the paying overages for classes, the very few classes over 26, I think for me it's a reasonable compromise between increasing our whatever cost to $500,000 or $1 million than not paying anything. So I think that middle of the ground compromise is something I can accept. So I'm ready to make a motion that we give the district the flexibility to go up to 29/31 with the understanding of paying overages for classroom size over 26 for TK3.
Okay, Member John makes a motion, need a second.
I'll second that.
Member Thomas seconds. Okay, give me a second. Okay, please vote. Those that are in favor of the motion, please raise your hand, the ones that are here.
Aye.
And we can say aye. Member Thomas,
Aye.
just to be clear. Member John?
Aye.
Member Gutierrez?
Aye.
Member Martinez?
No.
Okay. And Member Rodriguez, aye. So we got 4 ayes.
0 absent, 0 abstentions. I've got it for the record.
Okay, motion passes. If there's nothing else, we adjourn.